Broken masterpiece. An oxymoron, I know, but I can think of no better way to describe the works of the now-defunct game developer, Troika. True strokes of genius aren't conjured from intellectual property or licenses, and they aren't built by amorphous companies or brands. These are works of passion by individual people. Designers, artists, coders, composers, and writers who have an inspired concept and the dedication and willpower to turn that into a reality. If you trace the rise and fall of a given game franchise or genre, you will likely notice certain names in the industry follow your favorite games. If you enjoyed immersive, first-person sims like Ultima Underworld, System Shock, and later Deus Ex, you'll find that Warren Spector pops up in the credits of each of these. If you enjoyed old-school RPG writing with deep world-building and memorable characters, you'd be remiss not to notice Chris Avalone's involvement in role-playing games like Fallout, Icewind Dale, Planescape Torment, and Neverwinter Nights. Even as developers come and go, change and reform, talented individuals bring the inspiration to their projects and development studios, not the other way around. The now legendary Black Isle Studios, a division of Interplay, were the minds behind many of the greatest computer RPGs of all time. Baldur's Gate, Fallout, Planescape Torment, and Icewind Dale all came to be under Black Isle's leadership and direction, and their influence in the industry can be felt even today. After what would become one of the company's biggest hits, Fallout was released, designer and coder Tim Cain and his team started on a sequel. But shortly after the main story and much of Fallout 2 was created, things were on the rocks for the once thriving company. The scene at Interplay had changed. The by gamers for gamers ethos was giving way to a more corporate and marketing-driven development style. And so several key staff left years before Interplay folded its PC game development studios. Tim Cain, Jason Anderson, and Leonard Boyarsky were three key pillars behind the creation of Fallout: art, design, and coding. And so they named their new company Troika Games, which borrows the Russian word meaning three of any kind. Their debut project was a brand new intellectual property, but within a similar game system and genre as Fallout. Securing a publisher in the adventure game giant Sierra, this would lead to the creation of Arcanum, of Steamworks and Magic Obscura. As much love Troika Games had for their post-apocalyptic masterpiece a few years ago, they realized they needed to create something fresh and different from Fallout, or the standard fantasy tropes of Dungeons & Dragons. The setting Troika developed is a fascinating one, and is likely the thing that interested me most when I first heard about it in the late 90s. You could sum up the world of Arcanum as an answer to the question, what would a traditional fantasy setting with elves, dwarves, dragons, and magic be like if it went through an industrial revolution? The result is marvelous. Jules Vernean airships, orcs with monocles, and ogres with muskets and bowler hats. This wasn't your pop culture steampunk, with gears glued on to top hats and corsets. No, this was a truly realized world with a history both known and unknown, and a serious and logical conclusion. What the magical elements of a fantasy setting would face in the shadow of coal trains and zeppelins. Your introduction to the story begins just like any great RPG should, with an open-ended mystery. You're shown to be on a great zeppelin cruise in the sky, when some crude fighter planes shoot the vessel down. In the wreckage you find but one survivor, a gnomish man who gives you a ring, and in his dying breath tells you to find the boy. This sparks a long and arduous journey, with mysterious friends and enemies looking to intervene at every step. Interesting themes prevail throughout the game. There's a sort of anxious tension felt throughout the world, as amplified by the gorgeous string quartet soundtrack by Ben Hogue. It's easily one of the most striking parts of the experience, and a unique way to score a video game, ranging from the dramatic main theme song to soothing sweeps of the violin, to unsettling pricks at the strings in caves or dungeons. It sounds like no other game out there and provides an immersive experience, as these instruments existed in the era Arcanum is set in. Gentle strings or harsher plucks emanate from virtually every location. There are only about 3 tracks that contain anything but this combination of violins, viola, and cello. And as much as it pains me to fault this brilliant soundtrack, there were times where I felt it grated on my nerves due to its lack of variety. The deliberately dreary atmosphere is curious. A world shrugging off the superstitions, magic, and monsters of the past into an equalizing, steam-powered future should be an optimistic one. But in Arcanum, you can feel the uneasiness everywhere. In the city streets, in the voices of its people, and in the factories that keep the society afloat. In an interesting twist, Arcanum, like Fallout, is in a way post-apocalyptic. Exploring the colorful world, you'll happen across forgotten ruins and artifacts left behind by Vendigroth, an ancient, advanced civilization long gone. You find magnanimous dragon skeletons in caves, and traces of a mysterious history lost in time. The current society is divided, with magic and technology in existential conflict. Machinery can interrupt the workings of spellcasting, and mages will be banned from locomotive travel for fear that they will disrupt the steam engine and derail the train. You'll come across the busy, booming industrial city of Tarant, as well as the decaying monarchy of Cumbria, and it's clear that technology is on the rise, and magic is on the decline. The humans and gnomes started the Industrial Revolution that took the world by storm, but the elves gathered their kind in their great forest cities and retained their magical legacy. Racism and technologism run rampant, and the world has become so obsessed with economic progress and industry to care about one another. The main quest travels the world from desert ruins to lush forests, to industrious cities in search of an ancient enemy long since gone, but rumored to reawaken. There are plenty of twists and turns to follow, and nothing is as it seems. It's quite an interesting tale, and the deep lore you can read up on could have inspired a series in itself, had it met more commercial success. The absolute conviction to the setting is commendable. Instead of simply name-dropping setting details in every other line of dialogue, the Arcanum experience is one to be discovered, not force-fed. You can read newspapers that describe world happenings as they occur. Read up on notes, letters, and books to divine more about the history of the nations at play. And each character's unique pros and cons will ensure you will have a different experience one from the next. When it shines, it's truly marvelous game design, one that players have adored and begged for a return to since the game's release in 2001. Doing what you know isn't always a bad idea, but the Troika team saw the trend away from turn-based games and decided to create two divisive combat systems. One real-time a la Baldur's Gate, one turn-based like Fallout. The apparent haste in which these systems were designed is palpable, however. I found the real-time system to be far too hectic without pauses and breathers to cast spells, use items, or target specific enemies. Melees would be over in a few seconds of swiping and slashing, while you frantically tried to use tactics or skills to keep yourself alive. Turn-based was more balanced and forgiving, borrowing the action point system from Fallout, but with a lot less readability. Actions no longer had a handy indicator showing how many points are going to be used, instead having to rely on a clunky meter at the bottom of the screen. Called shots to the head, arms, and legs are now hidden hotkeys rather than an intuitive anatomy chart like in Fallout. And Arcanum is what you might call a whiff simulator, where combat can go by with miss after miss, sometimes resulting in what looks like the world's worst gladiator fight. This is likely by design to make both real-time and turn-based combat viable, but it shows its underdeveloped and unbalanced nature when you try to break the system. There was a fight against a slow, lumbering enemy where I couldn't move away fast enough to shoot him safely in turn-based, but when switching to real-time combat out of curiosity, gunshots are quick and movement was rapid, so I could kite him with brief pauses to shoot, effectively breaking the combat system and making an impossible battle easy. There's a more complicated damage system too. Instead of having hit points and possibly a mana bar, the game features HP and fatigue. Sometimes while attacking or taking a hit, you will take fatigue damage as well. And spellcasters also take a hit to fatigue when using magic, so you can literally spell yourself into unconsciousness if you're not careful. An interesting physiological and realistic take on taxing magic use, compared to the physical resource-based use of guns and technological abilities provided they have enough bullets or scrap parts handy. Insufficient audio-visual feedback even from hits is disappointing too. Hits won't even trigger an impact sound or a damage animation, making much of the combat seem more like a passive affair, even when compared to the years-old Fallout games. At the core of Arcanum's setting and mechanics is the compelling magic tech system. Each magic item and character point spent on a magic school will move your magic tech meter toward magic. For every gadget, firearm, or point spent on guns, repair, or engineering disciplines, the meter will favor technology. This comes into play during spellcasting and use of technological skills. Favoring technology will create a resistance to magic in general, and can even block healing spells. Being magically inclined will sometimes negate tech disciplines too. Without warning, the magic tech meter can even swing in one direction or the other, depending on if your character is standing near a train, factory, or other source of influence. This is a fascinating mechanic, but borders on the obtuse, since you don't get a calculation or pop-up that explains what is going on when things fail for no apparent reason. There are a metric ton of technological disciplines to learn and use, from smithing guns, armors, and swords, assembling clockwork automatons, mixing ointments, poisons, and acids, and inventing electric tools and devices for easier adventuring. There is an underrated crafting system in the game, which grants you a new schematic for each level acquired in each discipline, as well as additional schematics found or bought in the world. A schematic is needed to craft a given item and shows the 2 ingredients you need to do so. Combining fuel and a rag gets you a Molotov cocktail. Piecing together a rifle and a looking glass will get you a scoped rifle. Mixing charcoal and saltpeter will make bullets. This is an intuitive system that's both addictive and simple. The only issue I had was that some schematics for much needed things were a little hard to find at times. The colleges of magic to choose from are equally vast. From summoning creatures out of thin air, raising the dead, channeling fire, earth, water, and air, transforming creatures, charming animals, healing, creating illusions, manipulating time itself, psychic persuasion, teleportation, sensory spells, and many more. I've seen few games with such a wide swath of magic, which range from pretty mundane tricks to awe-inspiring miracles, though a little overpowered. Like Fallout before it, Arcanum has a classless system with a few starting molds to work off of, but if you prefer not having to battle the sometimes overwhelming options you have, you can let the game guide your level-to-level progression using a class-like template. Arcanum replaces traits with character backgrounds. Say you were raised by a wealthy family, were constructed like a Frankenstein's monster, or were raised by orcs. All these add a sense of flavor during character creation, but also impact your stats in a major way too. With the addition of races to the mix, 7 in all, and the 2 vastly varied fields of technology and magic, Arcanum offers more variety than most other games even today. As you might expect from CRPG design veterans, Arcanum is as open-ended as any game you'll play. In just about every quest you receive, there are many ways to tackle them, some not as obvious as others. It has one of the most advanced non-player character interaction systems ever made, with a complex reaction algorithm which measures an NPC's preferences against your character's magical or technological affiliation, reputation, race, physical beauty, and mental charisma. A tinker will turn away mages, a shopkeeper might sneer racial slurs at a half-ogre, or flatter a beautiful elf. The sheer amount of responses and mechanics at play in your dialogue experiences is almost mind-boggling, especially when compared to the more narrow and streamlined dialogue systems of modern games. Some side quests even divide up into mini objectives that can be completed independently. In one of the earlier examples, you can happen upon a ghost in a cave hovering over his corpse. He tells you that he was cursed to eternal torment by an evil priest when asking for shelter for the night. You can blindly follow his request to hunt down and kill the priest. The spirit promises to reveal the location of hidden treasure for your efforts. Or you can question him and hear his side of the story, that a pair of bandits killed the priest's family and stole a valuable artifact. At this point, you can interrogate the spirit in multiple ways, either by falsely promising his release from his torture should he help you find his cohort, or by pushing the revenge angle of his partner's betrayal. Then you can find this other bandit at a shack and either murder him or threaten him into giving up the artifact. And to top all this off, after going well out of your way for days doing all these goody two-shoes deeds and returning the artifact to the priest, you can still kill him and fulfill the spirit's dastardly wishes, and finish that quest line too. Many quests are written in this way, and like some modern examples like The Witcher 3, much of what you know or understand of each situation may or may not be what it seems. It's impressive how the narrative of all these stories, NPC AI, the day-night system, and time schedule all come together to sell you on this world. You can watch the whole world go to sleep, then by nightfall break into a shop through lockpicking or smashing windows or doors, and loot their valuables. By dawn, they will wake up and perform their daily duties. Everything you can buy or acquire are all stored in accessible containers or on their person, unlike many modern games, which hide item inventories off-map to curtail exploitation. Arcanum wants you to play it, break it, and exploit it. Though technologically conservative and its instability is frustrating at times, it was a work of passion to bring us a living, breathing world we'd never experienced before. Arcanum is a fantastic concept, with many great ideas and some of them executed well, but suffered from the malady that brings so many games down: incompleteness and insufficient polish. Clearly suffering from a rushed production, as seen in the dozens and dozens of item, object, or character descriptions using a standard placeholder icon, the combat was cruder and more unbalanced than even Fallout and Baldur's Gate from a half-decade before. New mechanics like the inspired magic tech meter weren't transparent enough to make it as strategic and compelling as it should have been. Audiovisual feedback in combat was lackluster, and even compared to the team's previous work on Fallout, seemed unimpactful and lifeless. To say nothing of the severe bugs and technological problems the game faced. The engine progressively loaded larger maps as you explored them, rather than fully loading smaller zones all at once. This badly implemented memory management feature causes the game to stall for long periods of time even today, sometimes after traveling but a few feet away from your last loading pause. Get used to the spinning clock face. You're going to be seeing a lot of it. But underneath all of this roughness is one of the more unique and underexposed role-playing games of the decade, with an incredibly diverse amount of progression options and playstyles to adopt. From a swashbuckling swordsman to a diplomatic psychic, from a beautiful necromancer to a nimble gunslinger, a shadowy rogue to a robot-building engineer, and many, many more. Had there been more development time or technology behind Arcanum, it may have launched a successful franchise, as was planned with an Ultima Underworld-style follow-up to the game, called Journey to the Center of Arcanum, a Jules Vernean adventure powered by the Source engine. Sadly cancelled when disputes between the publisher Sierra and engine creator Valve cut the project short. A flawed diamond in the rough, just needing a finer cut and more polish to see its brilliance gleam on the masses. Arcanum still received praise for all it did right, but this is just the beginning of the sheer inspiration and travail of Troika Games. So what was your experience with Arcanum? Are you a Troika veteran, scarred and all, or are you new to this underexposed classic? Let's discuss in the comments. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next entry to this 3-part series covering Troika Games. A big shout out to my amazing patrons for supporting my work. Please check out the link to my Patreon at the end of this video to consider sponsoring my content. And thank you for watching.